I guess so. It turns out yesterday when I was doing my tutorials and tips and tricks videos, I realized that my camera was obscuring the settings, so I moved it over to the right. Now we should be able to see everything. I'm just gonna do like a quick rundown of everything first, starting with social. We're gonna move on to graphics. So social again, cross network play and cross network communications. You want to turn that off. Now those are normally turned on by default. Um, but you would have to go to the character select screen to turn them off. So if you were to go and leave the game, the reason why is because it is buggy. It has an issue. Well, crossplay has been an issue that's been going on with Unreal Engine. This can be traced back to even other games like Fortnite. So if you're back at the home screen, go to hit escape or whatever your menu button is, hit options, social. This is normally turned on. You want to turn it off. Now, it only works if you are not partying with people from different platforms. If you're on computer and you want to play with a PS5 player or a Xbox player, you're gonna have to keep them on because it enables crossplay. Otherwise, generally for me, I turn it off. Unless I am gonna party with a friend, then I turn it back on. But you have to do it from the character select menu. Again, it causes lag, it causes some weird stutter, rubber banding issue. For me, especially when you are trying to load from an instance like a dungeon or a cellar, and you try to go back to the overworld, it you kind of stutter there because other players will start loading if you TP from anywhere, then you TP to town and other players are there, and especially if they're from a different console or a different platform. It does cause some lag and some stutter and some rubber banding here and there. I don't know why that is. If I had a technical explanation as to why the Unreal Engine is suffering in that area, I wish I could explain it. But I did test this in closed beta. I did test in open beta. I tested it in Server Slam and I tested it in early release. And what I noticed is that when it's on, I have issues. When it's off, the game runs just fine. Yesterday I played it with these settings off and it ran just fine. So let's load into the game as we go. But I wish it was fixed because I want to be able to party with people from different platforms. Like my brother has a PS5 and we like to party up. So I'm gonna send that in as a feedback to Blizzard, just so that we can get that fixed and hopefully get it resolved as soon as possible. Now further down the social tab, you got friends, notifications. It's just really your preference. I like to keep the notifications on for when they go online or offline. That way I know they're logging out and what their progress is. You can keep it off if you want if it bothers you. Friend request received, I just keep it on just in case. Challenge and clan member, I don't keep it on unless you're doing like clans. You can turn that on. So those are off generally for me. I didn't really mess with this settings. I did tweak. Oh yeah, the timestamp. I changed it to military time. But you could do like standard um, formatting. You could do like the PM, or you could do the 6:30 or whatever like that. For me, I want to just make sure that everyone, especially if you're from a different country, most other countries use the military time outside of the US, so we stick with that for now. Everything else is default, so opacity, quest dialog, and chat. Actually, I don't like to have that on, so I'm gonna turn it off. Join local chat channel. I just left that on. Because this just output the text of the dialogue to your chat, and to me, I don't really need that. It's good for if you have. It's good if you need a visual aid. I guess if you have sort of like a hearing impairment. So yeah, we just left all of these on, and then just left the colors the same. Mature language filter, you can have it on, you can have it off. I just keep it off. Um, Enable display of local network players. I just left it on, but you don't really need to. All it really does is it shows who's nearby on the network, whatever. on your network who are currently on. So if you're like, you have someone who is on your Wi-Fi, like your family member, and they log into D4, you'll be able to see them. It'll mark them. Um, or you can turn it off and you don't want to care. I mean, if you don't have anyone on your same network, um, I'm gonna just keep it off for now for me because I don't have anyone that is on my network currently, so it doesn't really um, I don't find it useful. Enable quick join. You can keep that on. That's fine. It basically, um, anyone on your friend list can just join you. Unless somebody's annoying you, then most definitely turn it off. Now, let's go ahead and go to gameplay because this is a little bit more shorter. Controls and graphics are going to be a little bit more longer. Gameplay, generally, for every single game that I've played, I turn off screen shake effects. It's a post effect, and it does take a little hit on your resources. And it does to me. If you like to have that feeling of the power, where like you do some crazy damage and then the screen starts shaking, go ahead and leave it on. And if your computer is like high end, then yeah, you're fine. But for me, I like to turn it off. All it does is just causes confusion, and it causes extra effects like blur, anything like motion blur or screen shake that tends to cause dizziness. I turn those off. Combat hit flash. This is something that was common in Diablo 3, where every time you hit an enemy, they will flash white or yellow. This is good for if you want to see the feedback of your attacks. Um, so every time you hit, they will, blink a color. For me, generally, I don't like having that. You can have it on, it's just preference. But this is a dark game. This is no longer Diablo 3. So I turn it off. Because I don't want that, I mean, the game is dark, and I don't want my immersion being slightly ruined by a strobing. Yeah, also this to reduce strobing, so effects and lights and all those stuff that blinks quickly. You can just go ahead and click this on to turn it off, essentially. Highlight player when obscured, just keep it on. Especially if you're getting, if the view of your character is being obstructed or blocked by like a structure or a wall or a tree, branches, and you can't see. Especially if like you go into like the forest area and then you're getting mobbed. You want to be able to see past the top layer of trees and stuff. That way you can you know what your character is. That's fine. I'll highlight your character. Show damage numbers. Most people keep this on. Basically, it displays like critical hit, I think overpowered hit, or just normal hit. A yellow, orange, and blue. Um, so if you want to gauge how much damage you're doing or how much damage you're not doing, go ahead and keep that on. I keep it on just to see where my character is in terms of their damage. Whether I need to gear up, whether I need to tweak some things, or readjust my skill tree. Then yeah, that's nice to have. Show all tutorials if you're a beginner or you're new to the game. Keep it on. Um, just so that the game walks you through different features and mechanics, and maybe just something that you're gonna miss. The tutorial is there for you. For most us more experienced players, we just leave it off for now. um, Advanced tooltip compare, especially when you're comparing items and showing the equipped items and the one that you're trying to pick up or equip on. This gives you more stats and properties and traits of the item. So I generally is for me the general rule is whatever that provides more information for me to determine whether something is good or not, like an item or like a weapon. I generally keep those on. So tooltip compare, I want to keep those on. Tooltip information, generally I keep that on. It shows like this is lucky chance, property ranges, and then ranges is like from like 1 to 10. If this item hits for like that much damage, it can hit anywhere between 1 and 10. And it indicates to whether something is an additive or multiplicative modifier. So just stats, more details, keep it on. even if you're new, you want to get used to having that information appear. That way you determine what is good for you. Even if um, maybe I put up a video on how to look up items and how to determine what's good or not, but I'm still learning myself, so that's gonna be a little bit later. HUD configuration, you got left corner or center. I just generally keep it on center. Um, that's just the way they set it by default. Duration on drop, item label display, push to show for 10 seconds. Those are all preference at this point. I just keep it on default the way they intend you to play it. Skill toggle, hold all. Alright, those I just leave alone. Hold position is hold. Display main health bars. This one you can have it always on, that way you always see their health. I just do it on hover, the way they set it. Um, player highlight. In D3, you'd be able to see a glow around your character. To me, this is useful for players who have trouble seeing their characters if it's like a bunch of mobs or in a boss fight and they want to keep track of the characters at all time. It's a good visual aid. You can change the color to whatever you want. Generally, it's yellow or green or whatever. Doesn't matter. But it helps you with seeing your character in the middle of a fight, and you can distinguish your character's model from the enemies. Now, generally, I don't need that, so I tend to keep it off. But if you're new and you want to sort of take advantage of the visual aid, then go ahead and leave that on for now. But most players are gonna keep that off because to me the game is dark, it's gritty, and adding extra color kind of makes it too. I mean, it sort of makes the immersion a little bit weird. It kind of throws it off a little bit. So let's just get gameplay, and then we're gonna move on to graphics because controls is gonna be a little bit longer. This is just all low end stuff, so I don't have like a 4090. So if you get to this point of the video, then you can just ignore this and skip. But basically for graphics, what I do is I do Windows full screen because I stream and I tend to alt tab a lot. But if you really want to squeeze out frames, click on Windows. It's gonna set it to your screen and it's gonna lock it in. Most times it stabilizes your frames. So generally, I would recommend Windowed if you're not streaming, but Windowed if you are, or recording or whatever. This just shows your graphics card, your monitor's name, and the resolution is not gonna let you do it. It's just gonna choose whatever your monitor is already. Sharpen is set by default to 6. I dropped it to 3. You can even go further, and if you want to really squeeze out more frames. I don't think you're gonna gain any benefits from dropping it to 0, but it's up to you. I just drop it to 3 because I don't want my character to look like a blob, right? I left the font scale and cursor scale alone. Vertical sync, generally I turn it off. It does actually cap your frames to 60, however, and it also takes care of screen tearing too. But then to me, it kind of introduces a bit of lag, so I just keep it off for now. Limit cutscene FPS, it just limits the cutscenes to 30 FPS, so I just keep that on. Lock cursor, I keep it off. Peripheral lighting, I keep it off. That just lights up your accessories in real life, your keyboard, your mouse, your monitor, whatever. Brightness, you can adjust it here. If you missed it in the beginning of the game, you can change that. Colorblind filter, if you need that. Visual aid. Resolution, usually I keep it at 100%, but if you really are running a toaster or your low-end computer, you're kind of okay to drop it down to 90 or so. You can get away with that, or even 80. If you go even further, your screen is gonna look kind of blocky and choppy. So if you go all the way down, yeah, you'll have more frames, but at the cost of visual fidelity. So I tend to keep those at 100%, but you're kind of fine to drop it down a little bit. It just means the resolution of textures and you know 3D world, whatever. Fidelity, FX super resolution, whatever it is, I turn it off. Max foreground FPS, it depends on your monitor. If you're 144, if you're 120, if you're 60 hertz, you want to set it to whatever your monitor's refresh rate is, which is measured in hertz. Mine's is 60 frame or 60 hertz, so um, pretty much I will set it to 60 frames. If you're 120 hertz refresh rate, 100 to 120. If you 144 um, refresh rate, then go ahead and do 144 FPS. But for me, I cap it to 60. Anything beyond that, it's not gonna make a huge difference whatsoever. If you're a variable refresh rate monitor, um, I believe that you would just leave it at the highest possible settings, or just leave it at whatever it was set to by default, and it'll adjust your frame rates accordingly based off the monitor. It's supposed to align the frame rates with the refresh rate, and the refresh rate is variable, and that it pretty much it makes it feel very smooth without any especially when you're like 144, you drop down to 120, you'll notice that. Or if you're 120 and you drop down to 60 and back up to 80 or something, and it just goes up and down, you will feel that. But I think the way variable refresh rate works is that it matches the game's frame rate to whatever the refresh rate is of the monitor, and that's variable. So it just keeps it together, and it makes the game feel a lot more smoother. I don't have that though. Most NVIDIA cards after the I believe after the 980s or so, or even further back to 760s or 7 series, should have that feature available as long as your monitor supports it. Max background FPS, you could leave it at 10. It shouldn't matter, especially if you're out tabbing the game. It alleviates the resources from being used because the game's gonna run in the background. So you can keep it at 60 if you don't want to see the stutter in the background, but generally it doesn't matter. Most games though cut it in half and put it at 30 or so. But then you're fine to just drop it for even further back down, because you're not going to be interacting with the game in the background. You're going to be interacting with like OBS or your browser if you're reading something or watching YouTube. So it lowers the usage of your resources on your computer, your hardware. Reflect low latency. If you have a high-end computer, you can enable it. It should help with, I believe, the refresh rate or the latency speed. I don't know the technical explanation for it, but NVIDIA's been pushing it. But yeah, you can enable it if you have a high-end. If low-end, you gotta disable it. It does introduce a little bit of a performance hit. Generally, if you're on low-end, just hit low. As soon as you make changes to any of the settings, it's gonna set it to customize. Low will try to give you like a preset, but it does enable certain things that you probably don't want. If I'm trying to squeeze out as much frame as possible, I'm gonna make sure that I keep everything on low or off. NISO off, texture low, shadow quality low as possible. Dynamic shadow, if you read specifically on the right, it says turning this off may increase performance. Go ahead and turn it off. Anything that says that turning this off will increase performance, soft shadows, turn it off. Shader quality as low as possible. SSAO, you can turn it off. That's ambient occlusion. Most of these are like post effects, so fog, if I wish I could turn it off, but then right now I only have the option of turning it on low. Clutter, you could do low you want. It shouldn't take a huge hit, but it does. The lower it goes, the more performance you get. So I turn it off. Right now, I'm not really worrying about aesthetics. My computer's on low, and I'm more concerned about getting the frames I need. Right. For water, anti-aliasing, all low. Geometric, complexity, terrain, physics, particles, reflection, all low. Screen space reflections. That's off for me. So all of that, everything that's lowered here, will help with increasing your performance and your frame rate. Distortion is probably a post effect, so I probably don't want that. It says here decreasing this may improve performance. So generally turn this off. Low effects means that it reduces particle effects. So you want to keep that on to help with performance. So you save change, and I would suggest restarting the game once you edit your graphics settings. Most games require a restart for changes to take effect, so go ahead and exit and you come back in and you should be good. Now if you want to see the frame rates, it's Control R on computer. So the first time you hit it, it's on the bottom left of your screen. Control R. Actually, the cool thing is if you hit it again, it shows your ping. So it's measured in milliseconds for latency. So how is your network doing? I wish I can get like 10 to 12 milliseconds in latency, but um, their headquarters are in like Cali or something, and I'm in the Midwest, so it's whatever. I get what I can get, right? But yeah, you can turn it, toggle it to show ping, FPS, or you can keep it off. But preferably, I like to show FPS just to see where I'm at, or I like to show the latency to see where my network is. So yeah, that's graphical settings right there. Again, if you want to really squeeze as much frame out as possible, as I mentioned earlier, social, make sure cross network play and communications are turned off. It's buggy, it's laggy. It's to enable crossplay, but it's always implemented poorly in most games, even games that are not even running on the Unreal Engine. I've seen that problem in Call of Duty as well. So turning it off does help. I don't know why it does, but it does. Sound is all preference. I don't really have a guide for that. They have a ton of options here, but I don't think it's gonna give you any greater advantage it's just more like comfort and preference, really. Voice chat mode, I tend to put it on push to talk, and everything else I just left it on default. So here's what it looks like already. Oh yeah, make sure if you're doing voice chat in game, you want to set it to your correct headphones and microphone, whatever. And then generally I leave playing background off. Cinematics, you can turn off subtitles or keep it on, whatever. I just keep it on. I don't care. Text to speech, in-game loot, you can adjust it or turn it off. Ambient loot, I keep those off. Play audio and error, let's leave that on. Master volume, I keep it at 100. However, when it comes to like music, I drop it to 50. Effects can be a little bit like depending, like if you're a rogue, you hear that pretty often. The weapon slash. Now if that's something that kind of hurts your ears, you can drop it to like 20. I think I'm good with 30 because it does. I mean your ears, you gotta take care of it. Tinnitus is an issue, and you're sitting there for hours and you're constantly hearing sharp sounds or sharp sounds that can kind of damage your hearing over time. So no, you definitely don't want that 100%. You can drop it to 50. Generally I set it at 30 or so. Dialogue, maybe you like to hear the lore, so maybe up it to 35. Ambient volume, if you like to hear the sound of the rain or the wind or just the environmental sounds, go ahead and keep it at 40, whatever. Or you can just up it to 100. It's up to you. This is where my comfort level is, so I don't normally talk about the sound settings, but there it is. Alright, so let's talk about controls. Now by default the game is gonna have the attack, the basic attack, which doesn't utilize mana or energy. By default it is, the keys were set to 1, 2, 3, 4 on the hot bar, and then the left click was both the move, the attack, the interact. I rebounded those, and then this locked key right here, which is like the primary ability, or let's see, controls, key bindings. the core skill essentially is set to right click. I rebounded those. So if you were to go to here, just a quick rundown. Character panel. Generally that was C or I. I found that too unergonomic. Most games do I, or most games do like C for character or something, or P for panel. Um, I find that very hard to do because your finger is all the way on the left side of the keyboard, where 1, 2, 3, 4 is. Or if you're like me, I do Q, W, E, R. Or if you're like my friend named John, he does ASDF because it's more comfortable. Um, so having to hit I is kind of far, so I do tab because tab is right there near my QWR keys. It's more comfortable, and I often find myself needing to check the items that I pick up, or my stats, or um, whatever equipment I have on, or even, you know, check the skill tree, whatever like that. But yeah, tab is nice to have. The map button is generally M for most game. I find that very unergonomic, so instead I switched it to tilde key. The tilde key is right above the tab key, because I often find myself needing to check the map if I'm navigating through like a dungeon or navigating through the world, and I need quick access to it. I can't, you know, really move my hand in such a position to hit M, so I put it on tilde key. It's right there, so that's more convenient for me. You do whatever you like. You can put in whatever keys you like, but I find that very useful. Class panels all the way to clan screen. I rebounded those. They're all over the place. The only one that I keep on the default key is J for journal. That's easy to remember. Everything else, I rebounded those to all the buttons starting from the left shift. So from Z all the way to the apostrophe, or not the apostrophe, the comma keys on the keyboard. The reason why is that those are kind of easy to remember. So I don't have to, you know, search around my keyboard, like where, you know, what is the skill tree buttons, or what is the character screen, or what is the social menu. It's just Z, and then X is the skill flyout. C is the abilities panel, or whatever. No, V is the abilities panel, and then C is the skill tree panel. B is the shop. N is the collections panel or window. M is the social screen, and apostrophe is the clan screen. It's all in one row. And then everything, it frees up all the buttons on the top of the above that to, you know, you can do whatever you want there. It's all preference at that point. So that takes care of the general gameplay. So this is a little bit of a thingy that's coming out of the Path of Exile. It's called hold, shift to hold, or, you know, the hold button general. In the controls, it is generally set to shift by default, which is here, hold position. What it really is attacked in place. So if I were to attack this target over here, I have to get within a certain range because I have a certain radius around my character. You can see like the little dots around me. That's my radius. And my basic attack only has a certain range, which is just about where the knife lands. So in order for my character to land the attack, they have to walk up to the target and get within range and then attack. So that's what my character does. Now, if you're in the middle of a pack of mobs and you wanted to specifically target the closest one, or if you're fighting a boss and you're trying to keep your DPS on the boss, but you need to have your cursor a little bit outwards to evade, what you do is you hold shift. It forces your character to attack in place, and they will stay still. So if I were to right click now, or left click, whatever you have for attack, your character is going to move in range and attack. But if you hold shift, they're going to stand still and then attack in place. So I have my cursor further out, and she's attacking in place. You're not going to use this all the time. You're going to use this at different situations, especially if you're doing boss fights and you need a precise target, or you need to, like for the rogue, you have to stand really close up to your target. But then I'm, having my cursor out because I sort of like uh, predetermine where I want to go. So I want to do a couple attacks up close, and then I have my mouse out because I want to evade that way, further left or further out. So it becomes useful. So um, use hold, shift to hold, or whatever you buttons you set it to. Get used to using it a little bit more often. If you're like melee, if you are somebody who is like a range character, like a sorcerer or a necromancer, it might not matter to you as much, but I find it useful. It is an option in Path of Exile where you would click on your ability, and it would have an option to attack in place. And generally, you want to do that on most abilities that are not self-casting, but casting at a certain range. Like especially if it's a projectile or whatever, um, it prevents you from delaying. Yeah, that's what I also want to mention. It prevents you from delaying. So if I were to shoot a fireball all the way to the right, I want to set it off as soon as possible. So that's where shift to hold or attack in place becomes useful. It prevents your character from... The delay is from the moment your character starts moving to get into range. Um, so maybe you have a situation where you need to have that ability set off right away from your character. So there's that. There's also this concept of... Let's see. I can pull up my menu here. So I'm gonna drop this bow. Now, generally, the game sets you by default to have left click, to have attack, interact, and move. All three does is done by your left click. But in some situations where you have a boss fight, you have a bunch of mobs, or you're like simply evading and whatever, and you don't want to pick up an item on the ground, whether it's a potion, it's a weapon, or it's like a switch in the environment or whatever, and you don't want to misclick. Basically, you want to decouple or separate uh, the those three. So you want to separate move, interact, and the basic skill. As again, and it's set to default on your left click, so you'll see it here, and then it does the same thing. Now, if you're doing a boss fight and you misclick on something or enemy and you only wanted a move command, it can cause some trouble. So for me, what I would do is I would turn this off. It's gonna unbind basic skill, which is already set to your left click. I prefer doing basic skill as my right click, because I want to separate my attacks from my move. By default, the game does set your move to your left click and F. So this is how it generally will look like. Let's see. Yeah, this is going to be empty, so this won't show. This just show like this red line. I would right click it, and then move and interact. Now, this would be the ideal settings. So if you're running by a pack of mobs and you don't want a gray item, right, like this bow, and if you were to hold your left mouse button or click, it won't pick it up. That's because it's separated. It's separated from your interact key and your and if you have like a bunch of mobs here, you won't attack because you're only doing the move command. And by default, your interact button is set to F. So right now I'm left clicking, it's not doing anything. But if I were to highlight over it with my cursor and hit F, it picks it up. That's the interact key. So it's good to have, especially if you're in a dungeon and you're fighting the boss and you don't want to misclick or anything like that, to have move completely separate. For me, I am okay with having move and interact do the same thing. So generally, if you want to do that, you gotta make sure you unbind interact and move, and then have it on move and interact. It's just a convenience thing. but it's more wiser to keep them separate like these. But how I do it is I would hit F to unbind interact, and then I would click it again and hit left click, and that unbinds move, and now it's moving interact. So to demonstrate that, bow is on the ground, I'm left clicking, it's moving my character, but if I were to highlight over the item and left click again, it picks it up. So it combines move and interact. I find it more convenient that way, but it's your preference. Do whatever you like. With regards to the hot keys or the hot bar or skill bar, they had it by default 1, 2, 3, 4. Left click and right click. Obviously, I rebounded the left click to right click, so my basic attack is now right click. The original right click key, I rebounded it to T. I found it more comfortable than 1, 2, 3, 4 because 1, 2, 3, 4 is further up the keyboard from my wrist, and I find that uncomfortable. I'm more used to QWER, so that's why I rebounded it. It's your preference. You could do ASDF if you want. It's whatever you feel is most um, ergonomic. To me, QWER is like the standard for most ARPG games, so I keep it that way. The core skill is like the second ability that you unlock, or the second ability slot. I tend to put that as my attack. So right now, or actually that's gonna be my fifth ability. So it's gonna unlock here. I'm gonna use that slot, but later on in the level, all of them are gonna unlock, and whatever my main ability is gets shifted to Q. So the way I usually set things up on the hotbar is that my Q is my primary ability, and the rogue's case is Twisted Blades, or whatever ability that you're gonna be using the most to do damage. Because you can Q is, to me, is gonna be spammed a lot, and it's more comfortable that way. I don't like to use my right click so often for that, because I'm already using my right click for the basic attack and my left click for move. So um, some people will have their basic attack on Q or whatever, or 1, 2, 3, 4, but I find that very uncomfortable. So basic attack on the right click. Q is my main damage ability. W is the second damage ability, or some sort of debuff, or some sort of like thing to enhance your damage, or some sort of aura, whatever. You can do that. W. Like in PoE, if I'm doing Q like Fireball, W would be some sort of curse that is a short cooldown, AoE or whatever, to debuff them or to cast something that reduces their resistance. E generally is a mobility ability for me. It's something that comes out of Dota, something that comes out of League. Generally, most characters have E as their like dash or blink or flash, whatever. Um, well, flash is generally F or whatever, D, whatever. But like anything that causes the character to move from one place to another quickly, I put it as E. It's just like something I just got off of the MOBAs, and I do it for PoE, I do it for Last Epic, I do it for Diablo. R, that's something that comes out of MOBA. Once again, it's R is generally the ultimate, so the ability that does the most damage. It doesn't really matter in here, but I set it to R for whatever. Shadow Clone, I would probably set to R. And then moving on to T, that is, since that's further out from your hand, like from all the other buttons, so QWER, and then you kind of have to stretch your finger out for T. I tend to put whatever has the longest cooldown, so you can technically put your LT on there. It's whatever has like something like a 20-second, 30-second cooldown, because you want to be putting all the abilities that has the shortest cooldowns closest to each other. So QWER are much closer. And then T is like something that has a long cooldown, like an aura or a buff or like in PoE, it's a herald. You just enable it and you don't touch it again. It's just always on. I don't know if they have that in this game, but they do have skills that you enable it and it's persistent for like 30 seconds. In my case, it's like those shadow balls. I just turn it on once and then I'm good. And then if it goes on cooldown, I hit it again. But I'm not gonna be spamming it. I'm not like the same way I would with my Q or something. So that's my philosophy behind the hotbar. So the way to set it up is core skill has to be set to T for me. Basic skill is right, and then slot 1, 2, 3, 4 QWER. Move and interact is unbounded. Left click is gonna be move and interact. I left these the same. Evade. Town portal I set it to 2 because T is gonna be used for one of my abilities. Potion is 1 by default. And then I rebounded number 3 to mount, like the horse mount, and then 4 to dismount because it was unbounded. I think the original key was like something like Y or something. Anyways, shift is hold, and then action is, I think action was either Y because T was portal. So I rebounded action to 5. Action is this little circle interface. If you were to open it, you can, at the top you'll see the pages that it's on, so that you got 3 circles. If you scroll up, it shows the emotes. If you scroll down, it goes back to the middle and it goes to the empty slots. You can customize this. So this thing is pretty cool. If it was Y, it's a little bit too far out, so at 5 I find it more comfortable. But yeah, I mean,
so many ways I can kill you.
You can see how it works. It does have the leave dungeon, which is going to be very useful, especially if you're going in and out of instances. You're going to be using that pretty often. And you got your emotes, and you got your inspect here, invite to party, invite to trade, open chat, zooming, and I believe that these indicators left and right is just to indicate you're moving from left to right on the interface. And then this one, you're probably wondering what it does. It's, you can equip certain things to. So if you hit customize, you can equip consumables here. So on this page, you can actually adjust the entire thing. You can completely remove all of this and put consumables as the first page or the middle page. So you know, all the emotes here are edit. You know, you can customize it, and then your consumables here, you can put it as your third page. That's what this wheel is for. And then you got your miscellaneous actions. So mark for blood. You can mark enemies or players, whatever. And you got your social, inspect, player menu, all that stuff. So it's a very convenient interface or menu. And so I set it to 5 because I think I should be using that more often, and I recommend players trying to use it more often too. It's convenient. Naturally, push to talk gets unbinded. I just set it to Y, especially if you're grouping up and you use the in-game VoIP or VoIP, voice over internet protocol, essentially built-in voice chat. And then you got your toggle frame rate, Control R, and you got print screen. And I just left everything alone here. I didn't really mess around with it. And then your wheel here, you can actually do hotkeys for those. So if you have a whole bunch of keys that aren't doing anything, you can pretty much set a hotkey to it if you're in a more serious gameplay. But then chat's obviously the enter button and all that stuff. I left that alone. And then you got your controller settings. I don't have a controller, so I don't have any suggestions. But if you do, then go ahead and comment. Or if you have any suggestions for that, definitely contribute if you would like. That'd be awesome. So that goes through the first 5 settings. And last but not least is accessibility. If you need some visual or audio aid, then you got that. I don't have any particular suggestions here, but this includes some of the menus from like graphics and gameplay or whatever. It's all sort of mashed in here for convenience. But it's really nice to see that Diablo has these features for people that need or accessibility options. So you got screen readers, you got text to speech, you got some visual aid options here, color changing, subtitles, and then you got gameplay, controls, highlights. See, and some of these menus are familiar from the previous, other 5 or so. Play audio on targeting objects. So here's that. So that's pretty much it. Um, Again, I made some videos yesterday, and my camera was covering the menu, so you weren't able to see what I was turning on or off. So I had to do this video today. But this one is more comprehensive, more general. Um, so I hope you find that useful. Um, Later on, I'm gonna try and put up videos on the gameplay, like certain things like crafting or just general mechanics. But I'm still learning the game myself. I barely have any experience in Diablo. I only played a few minutes in Diablo 3, but this game is new for a lot of players. For myself, I come from a PoE background. That's Path of Exile. I did play a little bit of Last Epic, and Vulcan, and I'm finding a lot of fun in Diablo. As it has really good mechanics. I also played Lost Ark too. I like the mechanics in here. Lost Ark is one of the best mechanics I've ever played in terms of an action game or action RPG game. Um, but this one that has a good sort of Diablo feel to it, and also a good it's in between um, uh, Lost Ark and PoE. Like if you took the best part of Lost Ark and took some of the better parts of PoE, it feels like that. It runs more smoothly. It's fluid. So yeah, um, I'm enjoying the mechanics a lot. Visually, great. Audio, great. Mechanics, great. So I don't see much downsides to the game. Just some bugs here and there, but other than that, those are fixable, right? So, if you're starting off this weekend or you're starting off on the 6th, I hope you enjoy it. If you have any comments or feedback or suggestions, if you have any ideas about the game, or if you have something that you notice about the game that most people don't see, uh, you can go ahead and comment. You can also subscribe if you want. Doesn't matter to me. That's nice if you do. If you plan to make content, share it. I want to see what you got because I want to know more about this game too, and more tips and tricks. All right. So yeah, that's everything that I got so far. Hopefully, I have more content later down the line as I learn more about this game. I'm running tier 2 hardcore because that's the way I like to play it. For most people, it's gonna be tier 1. It's up to you. All right. So yeah, get out there and have fun. All right. Thank you guys.